what I like to say is if your golf course was broken before COVID, you're still broken. Just because you're 25% busier is not because you all of a sudden became a master operator or a master marketer. I think this is an incredibly important and fragile time for the golf industry, and we better not screw it up.
Welcome back to the Future of Golf podcast. This is episode 19. Hard to believe we're coming up to 20 episodes where I'm speaking every week with some of the brightest founders, creating the brightest ideas in the game of golf. This week is no different. We're joined by another Canadian guest. We had Luke Newland on previously from Birdie, and now we have the pleasure of having James Cronk from Golf Industry Guru. James, you were very kind to show me around your apartment there and to show you your nice beach view in Vancouver. Looks lovely. Looks absolutely beautiful. How are you?
Well, first of all, great to be here, Graham. Thanks so much. And I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm a long way from my good friend Luke, who is on the other side of the country in Ontario. But I will be flying over Luke in a few days, actually, on my way to Halifax, which is the other part of the country, which is 6 hours closer towards where you are, which is one of my favorite parts of the world. So I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yeah, I think that's what people in Europe actually don't understand is like the scale of Canada and America. Like, it's not like you can you could drive across the country if you really wanted to, but realistically, it's a flight from one side to the other. And you're familiar with Luke then? You know of I guess Whiskey Run Golf Club too, right?
Oh, I'm very familiar with Luke and Whiskey Run. He's a bit of a rock star in our little Canadian golf industry market. You want to talk about an entrepreneur, a social media darling, a guy that's very progressive with his concepts, his ideas. He's got a great family business there with many people in his family at Whiskey Run. They're actually part of our platform of Golf Industry Guru, and so I'm a big fan of Luke's, and I'm sure you had a great podcast. I will listen to it as soon as I get a chance.
Yeah, he was a fantastic guest, and talk about a guy that's progressive and really pushing the needle of innovation. Really insightful, and as you say, just a social media gem as well. Like, always putting out the content. I get a sense, James, that even despite Canada being quite large geographically, that the golf industry there is quite tight knit, and a lot of connections there. Do you want to give me a sense of like the community behind Canadian golf and sort of what organizations exist sort of behind the whole golf golf community?
Yeah, that's a great question, Graham. I mean, we had a couple thousand golf courses in Canada, first of all, and 1,500 of those golf courses would be, full-size golf courses of all kinds, whether it be a private member club or a publicly owned club or a privately owned club like Luke's Golf Club, which is a public golf course. We have a very, very strong association in Canada called the National Golf Course Owners Association, which once again has 1,500 members, and even some private clubs are part of that Golf Course Owners Association. We have a very, very successful conference every year. In fact, in Vancouver in November was the first time back in person that we had 500 people come to Vancouver for the conference. And so you're right. Canada is a very friendly country, obviously. But I would say, Luke, the one thing I've learned in my travels is that the Canadian golf industry is very welcome to sharing of ideas, to sharing information. They all want each other to succeed. We all believe that, the high tide rises all boats. And so the greater the golf business is in Canada, the better for everybody. Many people wouldn't realize, Graham, that Canada has the highest participation rate of golfers in the world. So
that in the last podcast as well, that was stunning. I couldn't.
Yeah, it really is. Considering that for much of the country for 3 or 4 months of the year is covered in snow. So, but we've got a $16 billion industry in Canada. That's the golf business. So it's a very healthy business that's enjoying the boom of post COVID, like many places around the world.
Yeah. And I must say, James, over the last few years, I've came into contact with so many Canadians. It's unbelievable in the golf industry. They seem to be all over. Like us Irish, we seem to be everywhere pretty much. So when I worked in Kingsbarns, one of the assistant caddy masters was a guy from Ontario, a guy Gordon McGarva, born in Scotland, then raised in Canada, and migrated back home. And then I was actually caddying on a European tour event, so it was a pro am called the Dunhill Links. If you've ever heard of it, so you
Sure.
3 rounds in St Andrews, Carnoustie, and Kingsbarns, of course. And I caddied for a gentleman called Bruce Mitchell. So he was, big Canadian businessman. I think he said 1 in every 5 tomatoes sold in the US comes from his business. And at that, I was like, "You're doing all right for yourself. You're doing all right." So yeah, obviously, it strikes me as a very friendly nation. And going back to what you said, like everyone's keen to share ideas, which is fantastic. Um, James, I'm fascinated to get into your story because obviously it's not just golf that you've been involved in. You obviously have like quite a successful, managerial career behind you. Well, obviously this is the Future of Golf podcast, so we're going to stay reasonably down the line of talking about golf. Do you want to talk me back to like your first entrance into the game, like how you actually got started, and then what actually prompted you to like get into the golf industry as a professional, as per se?
Sure, that's a great question. I'll give you the very brief version, Graham, because my mother's written out a very long 35-minute version of this answer, but I'll give you the very brief summary. Um, well, I tried to be many things. I wanted to be a lawyer when I went to university, and I realized that I would have spent all my time sitting behind a desk with paper, and so that didn't work. I was an actor for a while for a living. The best part that I had was that of a janitor because that's what paid the rent because I wasn't a very good actor. And I ran some restaurants for a while. But when I was around 28 years old, I read this career book called "What Color Is Your Parachute," which is like a long. It's been a bible for people that want to find out what they want to do in their career since like 1973 or something like that. A long time, and it told me I should be in the golf business. So I learned my very first thing, Graham, which is if you're going to work for someone, work for the best people you can possibly find.
Mhm.
And I have followed my entire career with that philosophy. So um, I worked for a couple of very, very brilliant people in the golf business, and started off on the private club side, and then the public club side, and then the resort side. Running golf clubs, being golf pro, being a general manager, and then 15 years ago, I became a consultant,
Mhm.
and I've been finding my next job every month when I'm trying to get where my next paycheck's coming from. So it's been a bit of a wild ride.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of different jobs in the golf industry. And I think that's a really good point in going towards the most talented people and sort of shadowing off them at the start. I think that there's a lot of value in that sentiment. Even people my age finding themselves in corporate jobs, but doing really mundane tasks versus the opinion I've always had was go shadow the best people for a little bit less pay at the start, and then you're going to get just an abundance of knowledge off them. Then that will just that'll pay off eventually in the future. So I would certainly share that sentiment. Um,
Yeah, do what you love and the money will come has always been my philosophy, which I'm trying to impart on my two teenage boys at the moment. And so far, it's going pretty well.
yeah. Have you got them into golf yet? Have they picked up the sticks?
They love to whack it around. I can tell you they have no career as a golf professional. There's no chance that they're going to turn themselves around. Although I can tell you, when I became a golf pro, I wasn't the best. Like I'd like to say that there's guys that get in the golf business and girls that get in the golf business because they want to teach or they want to play. I got in the golf business because of the business of golf.
Mm,
I was never a great teacher. I was never a great player, but I was fascinated by the business of golf, and so that's been my journey.
hmm. And I suppose that kind of led you on to your manager status, and I believe you're obviously a member of PGA of Canada. Quite high up in that as well. So was it obviously your more curiosity for the business side of golf that kind of led you on that path, James?
Yeah, I think being a golf professional, I believe in my heart, Graham, that golf professionals are the most suited individual to run a golf club, uh, because you understand the sport, the game, the history, the what drives someone to spend 4 hours on a golf course whacking a white ball around. If you can pick up the accounting and the sales and the marketing and the food and beverage and all the other skills, and so yeah, I believe very much. I'm a 25-year golf professional, Canadian PGA. I've been a club manager, associated club managers as well, and so yeah, the as much as we're a business, we're also a sport and a hobby, right? Which is pretty fascinating,
That's,
right? Which is the
that's the phone ringing for business there. Don't worry, I can cut that out
yeah,
as well. I
that's
can
a
just
client. I put them on hold.
I can edit that out. Um, but yeah, like that's fascinating. You mentioned so many different elements there of running a golf club. I think people just as members kind of take that for granted. Like there is so many elements from like the marketing and promotion side, like getting new members to then the day to day operations of just keeping the place alive, like whatever, like food and beverage, actually getting membership payments off people. Um, was there anything like that you found in your experience of running golf clubs that was like a really challenging or a really hard element of actually doing it? Like what kept you up at night pretty much?
That's a great question. There's two things that I would say. I remember a story or a situation that I had, Graham. I used to work for a billionaire that owned a golf course as one of his many businesses, and he called me into his office one day, and he said, "Mr. Cronk, there's two things that I don't like about your business because you rely on it so heavily. One is the weather, and two is people. And the reality is that the that I can tell you right now when I walk into a golf club whether or not they have great people or whether or not they don't have great people, whether they have a great leader or they don't have a great leader. I always like to say that I've really only had one skill in my life as a manager, and that is I know how to hire great people. That's the talent that I have. I can find really good people. I can fire bad people, and I can surround myself with the best team possible. And that's how you have a winning team. And I think that's the most difficult part of our business. I don't know how to grow grass. I don't know how to make the best burger in the world. I don't know how to fold a shirt as perfectly as the next person. But I know what's required of the managers that are responsible for all those departments, and whether or not they're passionate about what they do. So I think that's, to me, is always. I've been very fortunate to be able to surround myself with a lot of great people, and that's been very lucky for creating some success for
Mm.
myself.
And you say it's one skill. I think you're being modest there. I think that is a very difficult skill to manage in hiring people to create the right culture in the club. And I think it's almost like an intangible element whenever you go to a golf club. You can almost feel the culture when you walk through the door of a golf club by the welcome you get, the shake of the hand whenever you meet the head pro. There is this intangible element of culture. Really curious to dive into the hiring side of it. So, whenever you were looking for great people, maybe it's an up and coming young guy that you're wanting to hire for the pro shop or something like that. Like, what is it? Characteristics that you're looking for? Is it skills? Like, what makes a good golf industry member?
Well, we're talking about the future of golf, and I know your podcast is about that content, and I would tell you that in my opinion, that is going to be the biggest challenge that our industry faces over the next couple decades, is the fact that my 16-year-old son is not interested in doing dishes or saying yes sir or no sir to a 60-year-old lady or member, man, right, in a club. So the attitude of service, of hospitality, um, is being lost on, uh, generally speaking, young people that are connected to their technology and their phone. And so the skills that are required to be in the service business, are in very generalized terms, are diminishing. And this is not just relevant to the golf industry. This is applicable to the hospitality industry all over, in any industry. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that this is a problem that we're having in the hotel business and the restaurant business. So, um, to answer your question, a long answer, which is, I look for many things, but if someone doesn't have passion for something, they don't get past step one.
Mm,
Because if they don't have passion for anything and they can't express that passion for something, then I can't get them passionate about taking care of customers, or taking care of members, or caring about what's on the plate that they're making, or about the trim around the cup. So they have to have some passion in their life. It doesn't have to be to get up in the morning at 5 o'clock and rake
mm.
bunkers, but they got to have some passion, because if they have some passion, then they care. And if they care about something, they can care about their job.
Yeah, you're not giving me too much hope. If we lose the hospitality skills in the caddying industry, that's going to be a really bad sign. I can imagine caddies just typing in instructions into chat GBT and just holding it up to the golfers. But it's so funny. Like, I guarantee hospitality, that skill set, like 20 years ago, was just taken as normality. Like, it was just a baseline skill. Whereas now, like, my generation and the generation coming beneath me is just so engrossed in technology, and they're going to lose those fine skills of good manners when you're greeting someone, or as you say, like the want to wash dishes as like your first job and sort of hustle your way up. um is it sort of like, how did you get your youth then to actually get involved and get passionate about something? Like, how did you make them feel involved and like a, I guess, like a valuable member of your team in the golf clubs you're on?
Well, there's so many ways. I would say, um, when I look at all the people that are very successful at creating culture in their clubs, there's some common themes that come about. Um, Number one is that they engage every person in the process, right? So everyone understands. Like, I know you'd be talking about football over there, and I'd be talking about hockey over
Yeah.
here. So, and I wish I knew all the terms of midfielder
Yeah.
and left tackle and
I
everything,
know
Graham.
absolutely nothing about hockey, so its feelings are very much reciprocated.
Okay, but what we can agree upon, right, is that a successful team has different individuals that have different skills, but everyone plays their own part to create a winning team. And so a great leader, a great coach brings the best out of every single person, no matter what their part. So, for the person that spends their time caddying, developing a relationship on the golf course and talking to I mean, that person is incredibly important to the experience, but they are just as important as the condition of the fairway, or of the quality of the hot dog at the turn, or of the way that they answer the phone when they call to make the booking. I mean, every little step along the journey is important. So, to create a culture requires many things, but it certainly requires everyone to understand what success looks like, what kind of culture we're trying to create, what part they play in creating that culture, what's the score? Are we winning or are
Yeah.
we losing? How do we get better? How do you make your role better? Empathy towards our team. I mean, um, COVID has created this terrible pandemic, has created a different dynamic now of how we deal with uh, people and each other. And um, there's a sense of entitlement now that comes from customers. We expect more. We expect it quicker, faster, cheaper, all kinds of other things as customers. Golfers are no different. I will just add, Graham, to your comment about robot
Yeah.
caddies, which is that it answers my other point, which is I believe that golf is a solution to
Mm,
technology. I believe that 4 hours on the golf course with your friends and family and your
yeah.
children, having conversations about life or about whatever, um, is 4 hours better spent than sitting behind a
Yeah,
computer screen.
it's so true, especially for the youth of our generation. Like I talked. The reason I came across to Kingsbarns was I got talking to the caddy master over there, like years back, and it turned out basically he had family from my village in Ireland, so there was an initial connection there. But one of the main things we talked about was how healthy not only caddying but golf is for the younger generation. It can be so tempting for the youth of today just to sit in front of a computer and just be brain dead essentially for 4 hours. All right, you could argue they might learn a skill, but nothing really trumps getting out, getting some fresh air, and learning those social skills. And again, creating those relationships that you might have for the rest of your life. And that's what a golf club facilitates. Really, is members that will play from 16 to 75 and beyond, and create those lifelong memories. Um, it's just gonna, as you say, it's gonna be a challenge to get the kids into it these days.
Well, there's a picture in my office of me playing Royal Port Rush with a wonderful friend of mine who grew up in Belfast, and his good friend Father John, who took us out on the golf course. And um, you know those experiences that golf provides are lifelong experiences. And we talk about the future of golf. Um, let's talk about that for a minute. Um, Yesterday, they announced the bifurcation of the golf ball. We have Live Golf and the PGA Tour battling each other at the moment. We have uh, more rounds of golf being played on simulators and putting courses than ever before, and then traditional
Mm,
rounds of golf in certainly in North America. I think this is an incredibly important and fragile time for the golf industry. And we better not screw it up because the last year and a half since the pandemic has created a boom of golf around the world in most places. There are countries that are just
mm,
discovering golf, that are just learning what the great game of golf can deliver. There's people picking up the game that hadn't played for 10 years until the pandemic, when the only thing they could do was to
yeah.
play golf, and they're still playing. There's more 35-year-olds playing golf in North America than ever before. Um, but we still haven't touched the 10-year-old very well. And we still are going to have that battle. And I think it's really important that as an industry, we work together collaboratively to ensure that we don't make it difficult for people to enjoy
Mm.
the great game of golf.
And I think you touched on the technology side of it. So obviously in the last 5 to 10 years, and I've spoke to a lot of the founders in the podcast, like founders of uh just one of the recent ones was VR golf. So a guy, Ryan
Yeah.
Engel, partnered with the PGA Tour, developed a bunch of courses on this game. So you can essentially plug in a headset, play whatever courses he's developed. Um One thing he did mention which stood out to me was he had a guy from a country in Africa. I can't remember the name of the country, but this country doesn't have a golf course. And they had users playing this game of golf that had never even like seen a golf course. And I was like, if we can find the right balance between playing real life golf, going out and actually enjoying it with your buddies, and finding some supplementation of the technology side, it could be really exciting. Touching on the Canadian side of the things, like obviously you guys have like a 4 month like layoff from golf just with your weather. Have you seen things like that being implemented in Canada? Maybe like driving range technology, things like that. What's
Yeah, very much, Graham. I mean, I get a chance to kind of go all over the world a little bit, right? And to see what's going on. I'm speak at conferences and things like that. And I mean, there's no doubt. I feel like there's some progressiveness that happens in North America that takes some time to maybe get to other parts of the world. But simulators, indoor simulators, the Top Golf experience that has now been duplicated multiple times. This Tiger Woods and Roy McIlroy League of tomorrow that is being talked about. I mean, you know, as long as you believe that someone swinging a golf club is golf, golf's in a really good shape, right? Golf is in a really good place. There's a lot more people with a golf club in their hand today than there was before in 2018. So as long as we're open to that, as long as we embrace that, as long as we try to um, ensure that those things don't become pockets of their own, and that hopefully people get to the fresh air and they get to the experience and they get to how many people would love to experience having a caddy? That's a once in a lifetime experience for some people, right? And unless you playing, unless you're coming to Ireland or the UK and playing golf courses that have caddies all the time, that's not a common occurrence. There's only a couple golf courses in Canada that have an active caddy program. And so, these are, it's all good in my opinion. But what the challenge is, Graham, is that if I asked you who's in charge of golf,
take your pick?
right?
Who knows?
Take you, right? And if you asked every golfer, this is my sermon is that if I stood on the first tee of Kings Barn and I asked each golfer why they played golf that came to the first tee, I'd have 20 different people come to the first tee, and I could easily have 18 different answers about why they are out experiencing golf that day, whether it's to get healthy, whether it's to have their best score, whether it's to get away from their husband, whether it's to, to do a
Yeah.
business deal, whatever, because that's what they do. I mean, whatever is the reason, right? And so, golf is undefinable in my opinion, and so we have to keep continually working towards getting that message out to
Yeah, and
everyone.
I think just touching on that, like the amount of demographics that exist in the game, I think that's probably why participation is so high. I think it was 67 million reported by the RNA. That's the total number of participants in the game of golf. And that's active golfers. So that's not including the folks that are going to the driving range as well, which is just staggering. So going back to, I suppose, nearly an amalgamation of all the points you've mentioned there, James. Um, what you've done now is fascinating, in that you've put all your knowledge together into a product that's designed to really help golf courses and help managers, called Golf Industry Guru. So do you want to maybe touch on that and maybe describe what it is before we sort of get into it a little bit?
Sure. I mean, very briefly. I mean, uh, in the greatest challenge that I had managing golf courses was staffing, was finding staff, training them, keeping them, making them happy, and having them come back again. Right? We are in the people business, and so and golf is more complicated than rocket science, right? So you've got agronomy, you've got food and beverage, you've got accounting, you've got marketing, you've got retail, you've got banqueting, you've got weddings, you've got all kinds of things, and we're a business. Like, once again, we don't make money, we're out of business. If we spend too much than we make, we're out of business. And what I like to say is, if your golf course was broken before COVID, you're still broken. Just because you're 25% busier is not because you all of a sudden became a master operator or a master marketer. It's because people are not, and that's not going to last, right? That we've already started to see a bit of decline. So Golf Industry Guru was our solution to once again, training staff in a way that they want to be trained through their phones, through their tablets, with little videos, with, really interesting articles. We call it Golf Industry Guru because we get articles, podcasts, templates, and documents, and videos and training from experts from around the world that are experts in their field, right? So we seek out a Greg Patterson, or we seek out a Mike Holtzman, or we seek out a Melissa Hansen that are experts in their specific field, and we say, if you had a beverage cart on your golf course, so if you had a caddy,
Yeah.
if you had a caddy master, what's the best way to train that caddy master, right? Um, Golf clubs join for a very little amount of money, like $100 US a month for every employee to get their own access to the platform, to 200 plus hours of training, and it's all trackable. So, Graham, I can go to the general manager and say, your chef has come on and watched 5 hours of how to create a menu, and your superintendent has not logged on. So, it's a training platform for golf courses, for staff. We're in 5 countries around the world. We're growing every day. We're always looking for experts and content. We believe it's one of the least expensive
Mm.
ways to
I
train your
could
people.
imagine checking the caddies log on and seeing how many hours they've put in could be an interesting one. I would say Graham Curry is not logged on this year. Um, but I think it's really interesting because obviously you have deep industry knowledge and what it takes to run a golf club, and all the little fine elements of it. Um, how have you found people learning through an app in the golf industry? I know it's pretty mainstream in most industries, but how, are like the restaurant staff learning through this as well? Pro shop, like pretty much everyone at the club.
I like to say that you can never do enough training, right? You can never do enough training. So you will never become a 5-star hotel if the only training you do is through a little video that your banquet server watches on the bus to work. It has to be supported by a whole bunch of things that happen. But if you don't have the time or the money or the people or the resources to do the other training,
Yeah.
at least the server gets to watch a little video on the bus to work, because that's all the training they're going to get, right? Um, training is not a once a year thing. It's a day to day constant requirement. We can always increase our skills. Our platform has things on leadership, on overcoming conflict, on how to deal with boards of directors that don't know what they're talking about, on how to manage your boss, or how to manage your employees. I mean, we can all learn from each other, right? You either believe in learning or you don't believe in learning. We just want to make it really accessible, inexpensive, interesting, um, always being updated.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
the point of making it interesting, I think, is very interesting because I remember back 3 or 4 years ago, I got a job just to pay the bills, really, in a sports store, and we had to go through a whole learning process. And I remember everyone was like 70 to 80%, and I sat on 10% for months on end, and they always got on to me like, Graham, why aren't you doing it? And I'm like, it's just a questionnaire. Tap a button. I could do it with my eyes closed, and it's not interesting. How do you do that then? How do you make it engaging for, especially we talk about the future of golf for these younger people coming in? What's your tactic to make it engaging?
Well, so I'll give you a great example. So we've got a course on our platform that's called retail selling, and just like the golf shop example you just gave, it's a 10-chapter course. Each chapter is a video that's about 3 to 4 minutes long. It's really funny. It's really professionally produced. It shows a guy coming into a golf shop, and he's called Wrong Way Rick. So it's like, here's the
Yeah.
wrong way to do something, and then here's the right way to do something. And then at the end of each chapter, the employee does a little quiz, like, what's the right way to approach a guest, what's the wrong way to approach a guest. And then they finish the course, and then it's logged on their profile so that their manager can say, okay, you've watched the retail course, right? And even if that's the only training they get, once again, it's just part of the big kind of puzzle. So for the clubs that utilize our platform really well, every time they have a manager meeting, the managers have to come to that meeting with an idea that they've learned on our platform that they can implement in their department to make their department better. It might be how to reward staff for doing a great job. It might be how to close up the driving range more efficiently by improving our
Yeah.
checklist. I mean, the list
Yeah,
is obviously
so
never ending.
always constantly seeking improvement. And I think through talking to all these founders with different ideas, so the last one I spoke to was Matt Reagan from Operation 36, which is a fantastic concept, trying to get
Yeah.
their goal really lofty, trying to get 1 million new golfers into the game. But the fundamental concept of their system was having a metric of success from being a beginner golfer right through to competent, potentially a college golfer in some cases. It seems like your system, it gives improvement in being a member of staff at a golf club. It gives them a barrier to like measure how successful they're actually being based on this system as well. So going back to what you said earlier, nearly being you need to give people a north star, right? You need to give them, what is success and what is not. How important do you think that is for, I guess, like creating culture in clubs as well?
When they survey millennials and they survey Gen Xers about what they want from their job, um, the top two, money is third. Flexibility is number one. Education is number two. People want to learn new skills. They want to learn things. You and I have had many different jobs in our. You're much younger than I am. We've had many different jobs. Um, I know the jobs that I've learned nothing, and I know the jobs that I've learned plenty. Right? I've used those skills in other jobs, and so by having an organized training system for that, we're going to have, let's say we have 50 employees in a club. 10 of them are never going to log on. They're lazy, they're boring, they don't care, they barely can make it to work on time. 10 of them are going to do the bare minimum. But if 15 or 20 of them really want to train themselves and learn skills and learn how to be a leader or to learn other departments or to one day aspire to be a chef or to one day aspire to be a club manager or a golf professional, then there's got to be a place for them to learn all that information. What we love about, and look, we're not the only platform in the world. There's a few other platforms out there that do different things. We try to make ours incredibly inexpensive so that it's a no-brainer. We don't want cost to get in
Mm,
the way of training. So our business model is all about scale, right? If we have to produce content for one golf course, we have to produce
mm.
content for 1,000 golf courses. The trick for us is to have scale around the world, right? There's 38,000 golf courses in the world. I don't need 38,000 to be
Yeah.
members of Golf Industry
It would
Guru.
be nice. It would be nice,
But
but I
but
mean,
you know,
it's not not essential for you. And you talked a little bit before about the podcast about being really open to the idea of internationalization and actually bringing your business overseas. I guess if maybe a golf club manager or someone in the UK, or say someone in, I know you mentioned you were in Australia there, but maybe someone in the southern hemisphere, or China, or who knows actually who's viewing this podcast. I've had people from all over actually reach out to me. Actually, one guy who hired me in Kingsbarns said that he'd seen the podcast before, and that's why he hired me. So it's funny here because um
love it.
what's your idea going forward then? Do you sort of see this as a potential solution for golf clubs it could be around the world. And would you have to adapt to their cultures in international markets if that's the case?
That's a great question, Graham. Um, we try to make our platform as globalized as possible. Unfortunately, unfortunately, we only do things in English. So there's no doubt. Like, I mean, we have some golf courses in Asia that are part of our platform, but they fundamentally have it's
Yeah.
for the English speaking managers that utilize the platform, right? Um, any club anywhere in the world that uses English can join our platform. You go on our website, golfmrguru.com, you click a button, it's all automated. You get access. You can download, like, we have, I'll give you an example. We have an employee handbook, right? Now, obviously, if you're in, a country,
Yeah.
if you're in the UK, there might be some, whether it's a buggy or is it a golf cart? Is it a pro shop or is it a golf shop? But you can download the Word file of that document that's 60 pages long, and you can, make 7 edits to it or 22 edits to it, put your logo on top of it, and all of a sudden you've got your own employee handbook that is kind of one of the best handbooks you're ever going to get. Like, because when we go and seek out the content that we get, we try to find, the best content that's out there to make it our own. Our whole purpose is that you don't have to go build it. You can just take ours and then make it your own, right? So as long as English is the language that you train in, um, there's going to be, as we like to say, if you can't find $100 a month of
Mm.
value, US, by the way, if you can't find $100 US a month of value in our platform, well, then I gotta say, you must be brilliant, or you're not training people, because everyone can get better at how to deal with conflict. Everyone can learn from the Robert Sarechis of the world about leadership, or about how to create an empathetic workplace, or how to be safe. How to create a more safe environment from a course and ground standpoint. I mean, that it's the
Yeah.
great thing about training is
Yeah, and
it's
I think
never ending.
instilling that mindset in folks that the learning side of it is never ending. And I think from the sounds of it, James, you're definitely the man to do it and pushing this with your experience. So James, we're going to wrap it here. Obviously, we're going to have a ton more conversation in the future. We could have went down many other rabbit holes, but an absolute pleasure to have you on. Great to speak to another Canadian as well. And I'm sure we'll do it again soon, my man. So, once again, James Cronk from Golf Industry Guru. Just before we go, if someone wants to find you online and is interested, is there anywhere best to direct them?
The best place to find me is in LinkedIn, Graham. My business partner manages all our Scott. He does all the hard work, and Scott Massey is my business partner. He does all the great stuff. But LinkedIn, Instagram, all that stuff. Golfindustryguru.com is our website. Even if someone wants to ask me a question or reach out for some content or some information, or has a question about something, James at golfindustryguru.com. I've learned everything I know from other gurus in the industry. Um, our mission is to share that information with other people that want to learn as well. So it's a never-ending circle of life when it comes to getting better.
Thank you very much, James, for your time. Anyway, it was a pleasure to have you on. That was episode 19 of the Future of Golf podcast. See all you golfers soon. Thanks for tuning in.